right, so this nut is a 16 millimeter. So I got a 16 millimeter wrench for it. So we're gonna put this on and got a piece of metal in my hand. All right. All right, so we're going to tighten that up. And you should probably want to get this pretty tight. You don't want it to be like super tight. You just want it to be snug again. So what you want to do is probably spin the tire. Make sure the tire is spinning freely. Tighten this up as you spin the tire. And I felt it grab. So I'm going to go a little further. And I can tell you this, I see the tire doesn't spin as freely now. This is probably going to need checked a lot because it's probably going to come loose on you. So I'm going to loosen that up just a little bit because I don't like the way it feels. There we go. Now the tire's spinning pretty free. So I tightened it up until the tire had drag, and then I loosened it up just a little bit till the tire was free again. Okay. So there's that. All right, let's see. Get this metal out of my hand. I got a piece of sliver of steel stuck in my hand here, driving me nuts. All right, there we go. Okay, so that's done. The fender's on. Handlebars are on. I did not put Loctite on them. I could have, but you're probably going to want to not put Loctite on these because you may want to adjust them, so I would leave it off. Here's your foot pegs. They're actually spring-loaded, which is kind of nice. And they have a little cotter pin in them. You probably ought to check the cotter pins. These aren't bent very well. I'm going to bend them a little better. Just so one review I read said one of these cotter pins came out and they lost it, of course. So, you know, check the cotter pins, check how they're fitting on the pegs, and make sure you bend them to where they can't come out. Let me look at this one. I got to go around the back side to look at it. Yeah, this one isn't bent very well either. They bend both sides of the cotter pin the same way. You want them actually to be bent opposite directions. So if one of them breaks off, the other one holds the cotter pin in place. Okay, so there we go. I got those bent. All right. Now, one other thing I read online was problems with the chain, so we're going to address that now. Let me move some of this stuff out of the way. All right. Okay. Clean up our mess there. All right. I'm going to take this board and I'm going to move the bike forward to where now the back tire is off the ground. See that? So I can get to the back tire. Okay. One thing I read is that these, I don't know if you can see these or not, right there, these Allen head bolts come out all the time. They're not in there secure. They're not tight. And I've heard people putting Loctite on them. I've heard of people putting lock washers on them. I'm going to Loctite them is what I'm going to do. So let me get those off. Let me get this back tire off, and I'll show you guys how to do that. And I'll tell you one other thing too. I've noticed right off the bat, this chain is pretty tight. It's got a little bit of play in it. It's probably about where it needs to be, but it's pretty tight. And Oh, I need to show you guys this. So let me take this phone off the stand here, and I'm going to flip it around. All right, let me show you this. This is something that's very important that you need to understand with these motorcycles or these mini bikes. Okay, now when you look at the back of this, if you look at the chain, if you notice, the chain kind of it goes straight, but then it kind of curves and goes out this way. So let me get my hand out of the way so you can focus. See that curve in the chain, that little bit of curve right in there? That's because this rear sprocket is crooked, okay? So again, they just throw this thing together at the factory. They don't check this stuff. And actually, if you look at the tire, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but even the tire looks like it's kind of cattywampus, like the front of it's in further than the back. So if you were to take this thing out and just ride it, it's the chain might fall off. And one of the big complaints I saw online with this thing is the chain falls off all the time. Well, you got to adjust the rear tire. So, well, we're going to take the tire off because we're going to work on the chain. All right, let's continue on with this wheel removal, back wheel. And so I got a 14 and a 17. And these bolts back here, these here are your chain tension or adjustment nuts. So you want to loosen them up until you can get this bolt to slide out. So loosen them up. There's one on each side. Want to loosen both of them. And actually this side's loose, just so you know. Again, you got to check this stuff. All right, we're going to take this axle off just the same way we did the other one. I got the block of wood underneath the mini bike now, so it's got the back tire up in the air. Okay. Right, just slide this out. These come out. You've got spacers in there. So those go on there like that. You probably got to move the axle forward as far as you can get it to get the chain to come off. There we go. All right. Then you got these spacers. Now see, this shows you just how cheap these guys are. Instead of using a single spacer, which all it is a piece of pipe they cut off, on the other side they use two short pieces. So that kind of sucks. And you got to deal with it when you put it back together, but you know, it is what it is. All right, now this thing should come out just like that. All right. Again, it's got a spacer, a piece of pipe inside there, so you'll have to line that up when you put it back together. The tires say they're inflated to 20 psi, so just so you know. All right, so we got 3 Allen head bolts here, and we got 3 on the brake as well. So we're going to take those off. We're going to put blue Loctite on them, and then we're going to reinstall them. So let's take those off. All right, we're going to set this wheel down here. Let me turn this camera a little bit so you guys can see what I'm doing. All right, we'll take this wheel off. I'm not sure what size these are. Oh, there we go. All right, now let's see how tight these are. Those are actually pretty tight. That one's not. All right, so I'm going to take that one off. What I would do, so you don't mess anything up, don't have to worry about fighting, trying to get stuff lined back up, I would take these off one at a time. Now, I don't know if you can see this one, how well you can see that. It looks like it's kind of stripped a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to tighten back up or not. I may have to go get new bolts. We'll see. Let me get that Loctite. All right. Here's a Loctite again, 1 drop. That's all you need. Put it back in. I'll see how well it screws in. Hopefully it'll screw in okay. Feels like it's going okay. And you can put a lock washer on these if you want to, but I'm not going to worry about it. I think it'll be fine. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take a regular Allen wrench so I can get a little more leverage, and I'm going to tighten this bolt up tight. All right, it did tighten up, so I'm good with that. Take the other two loose. Well, now I can tell you, just looking at this one, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but right in there you see a little red around that bolt. So it looks like it may have thread locker on it already. I don't know. I'm assuming it does. But I'm going to still try to take it off since I've already loosened it up. If I get it to come out. Oh. No, I don't like the way that feels. So I guess it's got red thread locker on it. So I'm going to leave it alone. So this must be, there's been a lot of complaints with these bolts coming out. So apparently they're, see that one I can't move at all. Apparently they're putting thread locker on them now. Let me check these on this side. See if they're, that one I took out on the other side was not thread locked. So I would definitely check them if I were you. Now these feel the same way. Again, you want to double check them just to make sure they're good and snug. Yeah. So that must be a problem they fixed. Okay, so we're good with the tire. One thing I did notice is the brake shoes did not come down onto this disc all the way. I don't know if I can adjust that or not. I'm going to see if I can, but they definitely need to move down onto the disc a little further. So don't mess with that when we get to it. I'm just looking at this real quick. Yeah, I guess there is, if you guys can see this, there's a slot right here that I think you can adjust these with, and it rotates on the axle. So once we put it back together, we'll try to do that. And one thing you want to remember on this, when you got the back tire off, don't squeeze the brake lever on the handlebar, because you'll collapse these two pads in here, and you'll have a hard time getting back apart to get the brake rotor back in between them. So you want to not touch that brake handle while you got the back tire off. Okay, so remember that. All right, so they fixed that problem. One thing I want to look at here is the chain. I'm sure this chain probably isn't the greatest chain on the planet. It looks okay. You may need to buy a new one at some point if it stretches and it doesn't want to tighten up anymore. There's not even a master link in this chain, so you can't really do anything with it. But you could probably take it to a motorcycle shop or hardware store, and they might have a chain. But I'll show you what I'm going to do with this chain before I put the back tire on. Okay, so we're going to leave that off. Next thing is, this is called a final drive. So the engine is here, and there's a gear in here that connects to a chain, and there's a chain inside here. This is a final drive. So this should be lubricated, but I've read online where this, a lot of times, does not have very much lubricant in it. So I'm going to pull it apart. Let's move the camera a little bit here. I'm going to pull it apart, and we're going to take a look at it and see what it looks like inside. All right, that's 8mm bolts on that. So we got a little ratchet here. We're going to pop this off. Looks like there's 6 bolts here that hold this on. They feel pretty snug, so that's a good indication that maybe they're doing a better job on these little mini bikes of tightening bolts and stuff down. I know people have returned them because they had problems with bolts, so maybe they got tired of these things being returned and they decided they were going to start tightening the bolts down properly. Now these are screwed into aluminum, so I would not recommend, at least on these, putting Loctite on them because you don't want to strip the threads out. You should be able to tighten them up tight enough that they'll hold. Now these longer ones, they got a lock washer on them. These shorter ones don't. That's kind of strange. These go all the way into the case, so they hold the gear in here in this part of the case to the engine, as well as the final drive case. Okay, a couple more here. Obviously, it's taken a while to do this. If you've been watching this video all along, you know how long it's taken. So, you know, this isn't just something simple. It's going to take you a couple hours to do this. Now, as you can see, there's some grease here. Down at the bottom of the case, there's some grease up here. This chain is quite a bit smaller than the chain that goes to the rear tire. This is your clutch in here. So I'm going to take some of this grease and put it on. You've got a couple bearings here and there. They're pressed in. They're the same type bearing as what's on the tire on the wheel. So I'm going to grease inside of them just because I've got grease here. But I don't know how good this grease is. So I'm going to take some of this. I guess I should have showed you this. Just wheel bearing grease is all it is. You can buy it at Walmart for a few bucks. It's not that expensive. And again, just take your finger and put some on there and just put it on the chain, you know, just smear it on there. And the good thing about this thing is it rotates real easily in here. So you can, you know, don't be afraid to put a liberal amount on this because it's going to be inside this case. It's going to be sealed up anyhow. So it looks like they're doing a better job of greasing these things. They look like they got a lot more grease on them than people complained before. They'd open them up and there would be almost no grease on these chains. So it looks like there's quite a bit of grease on this one, at least. So hopefully the complaints are getting through to customer service people and they're doing a better job. But so far, I haven't found anything that would make me complain about this thing. I mean, it's pretty normal stuff. You know, like I said, you get what you pay for. If you want a bike, you can just throw gas in it and ride it. Then you're going to have to go to a dealer and buy a, you know, $1,500 motorcycle or mini bike or whatever you want. You know, this one here's a cheap one, but if you do this maintenance on it before you drive it and you know, check on things regularly on it, tightness of bolts, you know, air in your tires, your chain tension and all that, oil level, change your oil, put good gas in it, it's probably going to run you a while. You know, hopefully this thing can stand gasoline that has ethanol in it, because that's pretty common now. It's hard to find non-ethanol gasoline, so I'm assuming that this is probably going to be okay for that, but I don't know. So there's your final drive. I just greased that chain, put a little grease on those bearings, and there's really no adjustment to it that I could see. So I think it'll be fine though. It won't spin as fast as the rear tire drive chain will spin, so it's probably just fine the way it is. This is a pretty good design the way they did this. So they could have went straight from the clutch to the back tire, but this is actually kind of a little extra effort that they put into this thing to make sure it works right, which is kind of cool. So we'll get it put back together here. Whoop. All right. guess they put lock washers on these two middle ones because they're longer bolts. And that's good. I mean, it'll help them hold a little better. Okay, now we're going to tighten these 6 up. And we're also going to check these 2 here to make sure they're snug. I'm going to start in the middle, the long ones. Tighten them up first. Again, you're threading into aluminum, so you don't want to crank these down. This is a 1/4-inch drive ratchet, and I'm putting probably moderate pressure on these to tighten them up. You know, you just want them good and snug. You can check them when your kids ride the bike. You can check them every once in a while. After 5-10 hours of riding, you should probably put this thing up on a table like this or whatever, and check all your bolts, check your chain tension and all that, check your oil level, and it should be good. Hopefully, if you start checking the bolts and they're all staying tight, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. They should be fine. So those 2 are pretty tight, so I'm going to check these again one more time. Put a little more torque on them, just so they stay in place. All right. Okay, there's that. All right, so we got that checked. That looks good. One thing I did when my camera was off is I put zip ties on here. I put a couple extras. There was only 1 here. I put 2. I zip tied the kill switch wire all the way down to the cable. And when you cut off zip ties, people probably don't think about this a whole lot, but when you cut off zip ties, let me show you here what I'm going to do with these zip ties. So when you cut off zip ties, you can take a pair of like wire cutters and cut them, but it always leaves a sharp edge sticking out, and your kids will, if they drag their arm across it, it'll actually cut your skin open. It's pretty sharp. So what I recommend is take a razor blade, put it right up against the zip tie and just cut straight across. And I even can go back and trim it a little bit. Now that's flush. There's nothing to grab your skin, nothing to cut your kids' arms or hands. So if you just go and cut all your zip ties like that with a razor blade, then you've got a nice, neat, flush cut, and you don't have to worry about your kids cutting their hand open. Just like that. Just like that. And that one's already cut. So there you go. That's just a little trick to help you make your bike a little safer for your kids. Okay, throw those away. All right, now let's back up the camera more. Okay, now, next thing I want to do, before I put the chain back on the back tire, I want to drain the oil out of this thing, and I'll show you why in a minute. So I'm going to turn it around. We're going to figure out how to drain the oil out of it. This thing probably weighs, I'm going to guess, around 40 pounds. It's not that heavy. I can pick it up fairly easily. So you shouldn't have a problem with that. Okay. Now one thing I want to do before I drain the oil out, you pull the starter and it feels to me like it's kind of dragging, like it's not really smooth. I can feel the compression, which is good, but it feels like it's dragging. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this 4mm wrench, and there's a bolt right here on the top of the engine, and I'm going to pull this Allen bolt out. And let me get that. There we go. Okay. All right. So there's one Allen bolt at the top of the engine. It's 4mm. And you can take this cover, and I'm not sure if I can get this thing off or not. I haven't tried to get it off. But I'm going to try to get this cover out of here without having to tear the mini bike apart. So let me see if I can do that. I think we almost got it. Come on, baby. Come on. Well, it's not wanting to come. It's almost there, bro. Yep, there we go. You got to kind of finagle. So you got to kind of pull it towards you and then forward, roll it forward to get it off. So basically all this is just a cover to protect the engine from heat, protect your kids from getting burned on the muffler and all that. I don't know how good it's going to stand up under use because it's only got one bolt that holds it on. And you could probably, if you wanted to, you could leave it off. You could take a saw or something and trim it, which is what I was thinking about doing, so I could get it back in there easier. But I don't know. I'm gonna see if I can get it back in, and then we'll mess with that. But I wanted this off so I can pull the spark plug out, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of oil in the cylinder. Pull the spark plug out, put a little bit of oil in the cylinder, and that way I've got lubrication in the cylinder for when I start it. Again, it's not something that you have to do, but it's a recommendation I would make, just so I'm trying to do everything I can to make sure this bike, when I start it up and give it to my grandkids, that it runs the best it can. So again, you got this little socket that came in the kit. Spark plug wires on this side. All right, hold on. Let me show you this. I'm going to turn the bike back around. I guess I should have waited to do this, but I wanted to get that cover off. Okay, let's turn it back around one more time. All right. So let me get you in here where you can see what I'm doing. All right, so here's your spark plug wire right here. Goes to your spark plug. It's got a little clip here that holds the wire in place. Again, this stuff, you probably should be gentle with it because it's plastic and it's probably not great quality. So I'm trying to get this wire to pop out of this clip. It's in there tight, but it's coming. There you go. It came out. Now twist the spark plug wire to get it to come off. So there's your spark plug wire. Here's your spark plug right here. You guys can see that. Put your little wrench on there. And they gave you a little Allen wrench to go with it. You just put it in the hole. And you turn it. Ooh, wow, that's tight. Okay, let me get something bigger. All right, I'm going to use this Phillips screwdriver. Hopefully it'll fit in there. Nope, it won't. Dang it. Okay. There we go. I can use this T-handle Allen wrench. Hopefully it'll go in there. There we go. All right, now let's see if we can break this spark plug off here. Break it loose. Ooh. Wow, that's tight. All right, that's good though. I can tell they're tightening things up. They're getting better at that. So I guess the complaints have had an effect, which is good. Let me go grab a socket for the spark plug. I want to see what size this thing is, because this thing here is not, it's sheet metal, it's not great. Let me go grab a socket. I want to see what size this is. Well, actually, hold on, I may have a socket. Nope, I don't. All right. All right, this is a 16 millimeter spark plug, 16 millimeter socket. So when we put it back in, I'm going to use the socket because I want it to be tight. All right, so we're going to leave that out for now. Let's set it aside. And I'm going to turn the bike back around. Well, actually, before I do that, let me take this Allen wrench and see if that's the right size. Nope, it's not. Okay, do I have a smaller one? I don't think I do. Let me look over here. Oh, no. I don't think that one's small enough either. Nope, it's not. All right, let me grab one of those. right, so we're gonna use these. See if I can find a socket that's small enough to, or Allen bolt wrench is small enough to fit these. Tell you guys what size they are. They're not a 4mm. This is a 3mm. Okay, they're 3mm. This right here is what's called your magneto. That's your ignition system. It has 2 bolts to hold it on. I'm checking those. They both feel pretty good. All right, there's a bolt down here on the engine, if you can see that. Let's see, that's a 4.5. So those were 3mm. This bolt here is a 4mm. It's tight. There's one over here, if you can see down in there. That one feels tight. There's some in the front. I don't know if I can get this in there or not. Nope. Dang it. Okay, these are 4mm. So that's your muffler. That one was a little loose. That one was a little loose. I'll check this one more time because it was looser than the others. Yep. There's a bolt back here. If I can get into it, I can move that air filter housing out of the way. That one is loose, a little loose, not bad, but a little. This one back here screws into plastic, so be gentle with it. Just look for bolts on the engine. You know, when you find them, try to tighten them up. That one's tight. One over here on the other side by the oil fill. Okay, so I've checked all these on this side. Let me rotate the bike around and we'll talk about changing the oil on it. All right. Okay. So this is the bolt I was on over here, and it's tight. And here's a bolt, the bolt that goes into the plastic, like on the other side. I'm gonna check it. It's a little loose. I'm gonna tighten it up. Bolts on the motor mount. They seem to be pretty good. That one's nice and tight. Here's a bolt here for the cover. That's tight. There's a bolt down here at the bottom of the muffler. That's tight. 2 bolts up here. These are cylinder head. I hope they're tight. Well, that one turned a little bit. Let's see about this one. Yep. So them are cylinder head bolts. Those are really important. So again, I snug both of those up. I'm going to double check them. You know, this is all stuff you really need to check before you start this thing. I know it's a pain, but okay. So those are tight. Now, and there's 2, since I don't have any gasoline in this thing, let me lay this thing down. There's 2 bolts right here. Can you see those 2? So let's check those. That one, I moved it a little bit. Probably be able to move this one too, I bet. Yep. Again, these are threaded into aluminum, so you don't want to just crank them down. You want to just make sure they're good and snug, and they're fine. There's your spring for your kickstand. It looks okay. I don't see any problems with it. All right, let's put this back down. Now, rinses out one front tire there. Now this is your oil fill right here, and it's really tight. Only a pair of pliers would work to take it off. Be gentle with it. It's plastic. You don't want to bend on it. You want to just get your pliers straight on it and turn it. It's got a let me show you this. It's got, wipe this off. It's got an O-ring seal on it. See the O-ring? And then it's got this. This is the dipstick, okay? But of course, it's not marked full or empty or, you know, low. So I'm going to screw it back in there. Till it's snug, and then I'm going to back it back out. And this bike's sitting pretty level. So if I pull it out, you guys probably can't see this. See if I get it to focus. So the oil level is about right there. It's about 3/4 of the way up the stick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the stick off, and then I'm going to mark it with the Sharpie so I know where the full level is. That way, when I pull the oil dipstick tube out or pull this out, I can immediately know whether the engine's low on oil. Okay. So again, it's hard to tell. It's about right there. So there's little diamonds in the middle of this thing. You can't see them very well, but about 8 of them down is where the top of the oil is. So I'm going to clean this off and I'm going to mark it so I know where it's at. Use the brake clean to clean the oil off so you get a good clean surface to mark on. All right, that's cleaned off. I'm gonna go grab a Sharpie and then we'll mark this thing. All right, so again, you guys probably can't see this, but in the middle there's some little diamonds. So I'm going to count down 8 of those, and that's where I'm going to put my mark for full. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Okay, so there's my full mark. And I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I've got 16 of those little diamonds in the middle that to the bottom of the dipstick. So I'm going to count halfway down and mark it again for that, and that's going to be my low mark. So if it gets down to that mark, it's low on oil, and I need to immediately put oil in it. So I'll count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'll put a mark there. I'll mark that one all the way around. All right. Okay, so we got 2 marks. We got one 8 diamonds down from the top. That's our full mark. Another one 8 diamonds down from that. That's our add mark. If the oil's anywhere in between, you're probably fine. But once it gets down to this bottom line, you definitely need to put more oil in. But I would keep it full. I would check it. If you don't check it every time you ride the bike, I would check it every other time you ride the bike. And when it's new, I would check it every time for the first 4 or 5 times you ride it. That way you know how fast it's using oil. If you run out of oil, it's going to burn it up. So you want to check it a lot. So check it every time or every other time you ride the bike. And again, you can choose whatever oil you want to put in. I wouldn't put anything expensive in it. It wouldn't hurt to put synthetic oil in it if you want to, but I'm using the diesel oil because it has the zinc in it and has additives that regular oil doesn't have. So that's what I'm going to use. All right. So that's where the dipstick goes, the oil fill. That's where you fill the oil up at. I'm looking, and I don't see any way to drain the oil out of here. So I assume to drain the oil, you probably have to take this out and tilt the bike up to dump the oil into some sort of receptacle. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. Now this is very important. This is probably the most important step of working on this bike, because I've read a lot of people that had complaints about the oil that was in it looked really thin and cheap. The oil that was in it had metal shavings in it. And I've read complaints about people riding this bike for only a couple hours and the engine would seize up on it. So again, this is preventative maintenance to keep your $500 investment from self-destructing. I mean, the engine's the most important part, but the oil is the most important part of the engine. It's the blood of the engine. So you want to do this. This is one thing you definitely want to do on this motorcycle, on this mini bike, is change the oil. So let's move all this stuff out of the way. I'm going to take my tray that my tools were in, make sure it's clean. I cleaned it once already. Shouldn't have much in it. And we're just going to dump the oil in this. I want to use this because I want you to be able to see what the oil looks like. So let's get this set there, and then we're going to take the dipstick out. Well, I'm going to screw the dipstick in real quick. I'm going to see if the oil level is where my mark is. So put that in. And yep, the oil level's right at the top, at the full mark that I put on it. So that's where I put it, is where you need to put it. Okay, so that's good. And I don't know what kind of oil is in this thing. I'm surprised they even ship with any oil at all. I'm surprised you don't ship with no oil and tell you to put oil in it. But I want to dump it out because I want to see what it looks like. I want to see if it has metal shavings in it. I want to see, you know, how thin it is and all that. So let's dump the oil out. I'm just going to tilt the bike. I think I can probably tilt the bike. Yep, here it comes. It's running down the foot peg, but you can see it dumping down in there in my tray. Just going to drain all that out. Make sure all that comes out. Okay. Made a little bit of a mess on our peg, foot peg, but it's not that big of a deal. We can wipe that off, clean it up. Not going to hurt anything. All right, now this is the oil. I don't know how much you guys can see, but this is the oil that's in this engine. That's how much there is. I mean, there's almost nothing in there. That's like very little oil. I would almost say you need more than that. So it might not hurt when you fill it up, the mark I made on the dipstick, to actually fill it a little fuller than the full mark. Because this is like, I mean, there's like, I don't know if you can see down in the corner. There you go. See that? That's basically what kind of oil, how much oil is in this thing. Now, when I look at it, I can honestly say that I don't see a lot of metal shavings in it. That's good. But again, I don't know how good a quality of oil it is. So I'm taking it out, and I'm going to add this other oil to it. Now, one thing I was going to do was, if there's metal shavings in it, I was going to take diesel fuel and put diesel fuel in the engine, crank it over a few times with the spark plug out, because it cranks really easily now, as you can see. Crank the engine over a few times with diesel in there, and then dump the diesel oil out, fuel, and try to get any metal shavings out of there. Diesel fuel's a lot thinner than oil is, so it tends to clean things a little better. But again, there've been a lot of complaints about metal shavings in the oil, and this oil looks great. It looks really good. It's fairly thick oil. You know, again, I don't know the quality of it. So I'm going to put new oil in it. I'm going to take a little bit of this oil and I'm going to dump it down the spark plug hole, but we'll do that in a little bit. Oh, and here's the other thing I'm going to do with this oil. Remember this chain I took off? Drop it in there. Let this oil kind of soak in it for a while. See that? It's going to soak in that oil. So I'm going to let it sit there and soak in that oil while I'm doing this other stuff, okay? So we're just going to let it sit there and soak. So now we know this chain is very, very well oiled. So it should be in good shape to last a little while on the mini bike. Okay, so we're going to turn it over, and I'm just moving it around, as you can see, in the oil. I got the tray kind of tilted so all the oils ran to one end. And this chain is, now it's got oil dripping off. It's completely soaked in oil. So that's a good thing. Okay, so we're just going to let that sit in that oil for a little bit while we mess with this other stuff. All right. Well, that's why I didn't put the back tire back on. I wanted to get the engine oil and use it to lubricate the chain with. All right, I'm going to tilt this thing over one more time. I just want to make sure all the oil's out of it. I think it probably is, but I want to be sure. So I'm going to tip it over. Try to hold it to where that drain is straight down. And all I'm getting out of it's just drips of oil. So I'm confident that the engine is empty of oil. All right. I'm going to set that there so the oil can soak into the chain. And that chain, you want the oil to get inside the links. That's what lubricate. That's where your wear occurs, is inside the links. And if it's dry, it's not gonna work properly. So that's why you want to let it soak in this oil. You know, move it around. Make sure it covers the chain completely with oil, and just let it soak in there. And it'll soak into the links and get them well lubricated for you. So that's one thing you can do with the old oil you pull out. Don't just throw it away. Use it to lubricate the chain. And I can tell you, when you first start the bike up and ride it, it's probably going to sling some oil off the chain for a little bit, but you know, you can wipe the chain down once you put it on, and that'll minimize that. It'll help. But the main thing is you want to get oil inside the chain. Okay, so we drained all the oil out. We know we're empty. All right, and we had almost no oil in it, which is surprising to me that you'd think they'd want a little more oil than that, but I guess it doesn't need it. I don't know. I have to find a funnel to be able to put this oil in. Let me go grab a funnel. All right, we got a funnel here. Just a plain old funnel. I'm going to spray a little bit of brake cleaner on it because I don't want any dirt from it to get down in the engine. Trying to save the engine as much as I can. So we're going to clean that off. Make sure it's good and clean. All right. Dry that brake clean off. We don't want that to get down in the engine either. Okay. All right, we're going to put that. Hopefully that'll fit. Well, let's see. There we go. I kind of tilted the bike back a little bit, as you guys can see. So the funnel's a little more oriented to where it needs to be. All right, now we don't need to put much oil in there because obviously it didn't have much in it. So again, I use Walmart 15W40 diesel oil. So let's try that. I think that's going to work really well on this engine. And this way we know what oil we're putting in it. And again, you can use synthetic, you can use heavier oil, you can use lighter oil, you can use whatever you want. Just whatever you think's best, or you can use what I use. It just all depends on you. Okay. So I don't know how much I put in there. I got to use my dipstick to find out. I think that's plenty. Again, this motor doesn't take a whole lot. Now, while I got this motor tilted back and I got probably more oil in it than I need, I'm going to crank this over. Just pull on it a few times, just so that oil gets moved around in there. Lubricates everything. All right, just like that. All right, that should be good. We're going to put that funnel over there. All right, now we got to set the bike back level again. Oh, look at that oil coming out of it. Yep, I got way too much oil in it. Okay. Okay, so I guess I better get my pan here because I got too much oil in it, which is fine. No big deal. All right. So we're going to drain a little more oil out of it. I'd rather have too much than not enough. Oop. Okay. Yep. It's still too full. Bring a little more out. Okay. Still too full. Man, this thing doesn't take hardly anything. I mean, it takes like maybe 3 ounces of oil. I'm amazed it doesn't need more oil than that. All right. So, don't expect to not make a mess when you're working on this bike because it's going to happen. Okay. All right, so there we go with that. All right.